third capstone is going to be the vertical life team, and I want to provide some context as the client, if you will, of this project. So this wasn't in the original plans for capstones, but it kind of cascaded out of what Donna was talking about with this partnership with Vertical Life. And it very quickly was like, well, we don't even have the branding and the presence yet for Vertical Life. So how are we going to describe both sides of this equation? And so it kind of morphed its way into a capstone. And so I'm going to tell you personally, my journey real quick is that this has been in my heart for 7 years, which is a long time to have God seed something into you as something that he wants to manifest into real life. And if anyone's carried something in your heart like that for a long time, you know there's seasons that go with that, right? There's the excitement season, and then there's like all these others, and there's like, will this ever happen season? And then, started to realize it was going to happen, but then it was like, I still don't know almost any of the things of what this is. Like sometimes when you get a dream, like you move forward in obedience and say, yes, Lord, but you don't have any of the answers. Does that resonate with any of you? You just start with obedience. You go, I don't know how to do any of this, Lord. But I feel like that's what, like, when you look at the scriptures, you see evidence of that everywhere. That God's just saying, are you willing? And I don't need you to have the skill set. I just need you to say you'll do it, that you're willing. And some of them, like Jonah, went kicking and screaming, right? So I was like, I don't want to be that guy, right? So that being said, along this journey, I started getting more informed from the Lord of like how to do all these different pieces of putting this ecosystem together, which vertical immersive is just one of those pieces. And then bringing together these corporations, if you will, that are just kingdom focused to pour into the next generation and to pour into community and to have our hands open wide. What does it look like to live in a community where we don't live like this any longer as a church or as a nonprofit or as a business and say the words mine, but it's yours, Lord. This is all yours. It's your kingdom. And how do we weave these beautiful things together? So I've been watching God do this cool thing where he weaves things together. And even the students get to watch this play out in real time because they know I'm pretty transparent. I just kind of say whatever's on my heart at the time. So to the detriment of maybe my other staff, they're like, shh, they're not supposed to know that yet. But I'm always getting in trouble. It's just like, I feel like here's what the Lord's doing next. And so they've been along for this journey. So when the time came, and we had the opportunity to turn this into a capstone. For me, I didn't hesitate. I was like, yes, this should be a capstone because here's what I believe. I didn't even know how to begin to articulate how to pull this together into something that could be communicated to the public because it just seemed so complex. But I knew one thing to be true in my heart is that when you give students the opportunities to rise up to the occasion and to do things that they're maybe at the moment they don't feel capable of, but you just equip them and you just entrust it to them. You go, hey, I don't know either, but you figure it out, that they do that. And that's what these students did. I'm really proud of the bits that I already got to see as the client coming alongside and watching them just work their magic as a team. It really inspired me. So I'm really excited to see the final product today. I'm really excited for you to see it because this has their fingerprints on what the vertical life is way more than it has my fingerprints because it truly is the Lord's project. So without further ado, I present to you the vertical life team.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wheeler, and thank you all for being here today and, of course, coming to support us. My name is Kai Gammon, and I'm part of the Vertical Life Capstone group. Again, like Mr. Wheeler spoke about, the goal of this capstone was we have big, audacious dreams and goals and visions for Vertical Life. And so for Vertical Life, we were trying to refine and clarify everything that is coming to pass and making sure it's easy to communicate to the public what exactly Vertical Life is. To that end, we started with uncertainty on our end and then went into more clarity. But how we did that was we had to first capture all of our tasks and figure out where we're going to go with all of the things we wanted to get done. And then clarify, what does that actually mean? What does it mean to have success in each of these areas? And what does a quality deliverable look like? Then we organized. We got together weekly, sometimes multiple times weekly, and talked about what was going on right now, what was coming down the pike, and making sure that we had a plan each step of the way so that there wasn't a season where we had way too much on our plate and there wasn't a season that it was kind of stale. So we wanted to be consistent throughout the entire thing, and that consistency made us able to do a lot of stuff that we didn't think that we were going to be able to do at the very beginning. So reflect is being able to communicate with each other. It's making sure that we were in constant communication and collaboration, which this team did very well at. And then of course engage, which is just simply getting the tasks done. And how we did that is this group is a lot of natural born leaders. So at one point or another, every single person on this team stepped up and said, I want to take this task. I got this. Let me have it. So how we delegated different tasks and things was more of a volunteer basis, or we went, hey, I've never done this before, and so I want to give this a go. So that was a lot of how we went through and delegated who was going to do what. There were multiple times throughout this project where we encountered challenges or obstacles that we didn't foresee. And so multiple times we had to take a step back and just pray, God, this is yours, and you have to take the reins and give us wisdom to move forward. And because we were able to do that multiple times, we saw a lot of growth and were able to see a lot of things accomplished. So starting at the very beginning, the first thing that we did, Danny's going to take us through the research and the foundations.
Thank you. I am Daniel. And what you see up here on the screen are the building blocks for the vertical life. These are important keys to understanding what the vertical life is about. First, we have the unique value proposition. This is to set us apart. What makes us different than anybody else? What do we offer that's different? Then we have the four-dimensional brand map. That is where we have these 4 key ways in a business that shows, hey, this is how you should feel or act while you're working with us. The audience personas. These are who is our audience and what are their needs that we can meet. And then the story branding is how the vertical life can explain, here are your next steps, and here how we, the vertical life, can then help you, how we benefit you in certain ways. Next, I will hand it over to Carson for the client communication.
So my name is Carson Poor. I'm a first-year student here at VI, and one of my primary roles over the course of this capstone was to be the client communicator. So that means I was the main point of contact between my team here and the client. And throughout this capstone, we faced some pretty unique challenges. Starting off, as has been mentioned, is we started with this really abstract idea. I don't even know if you could call it quite a concept yet. So we had to make sure we were very clear with our communication between us and the client to make sure we're really sharing the vision they have in their hearts, we're on the same page. And that was kind of an art form, honestly, at the beginning. We are also communicating with more than just one person. The entire C-suite, Brian, Susan, and Caitlin. And as most of the time when you work with the team, people are going to come from different perspectives, maybe have different ideas. And so something we had to really be careful about is making sure all 3 of them felt equally heard and were satisfied with the outcome we came to. We also were dealing with a client that all 3 of them were very busy people managing Vertical Life and their brands and their other things they steward. So we had to make sure we were being artful with how we kept them on track to make sure we can meet our deadlines and be ready for Capstone Day. My secondary role throughout the course of this capstone was designing and developing the website. So I, alongside some of my other teammates, kind of put this website together. We started off with a shell that the Vertical Life team had done a few months ago. And I would also like to note that this was really the only deliverable that we promised at the beginning of the capstone. It was really the only one that the client specifically asked for by name. It's a rather large website, so unfortunately we don't have time to go through it all today. However, at the end of the presentation, we will have a QR code so you yourself can go through and poke through it. We'll start off here with the most important slide, the values page. This is something the client communicated that they felt that if a person views this page and sees our values and find that their personal values align with the vertical values, it'll make it a lot easier to communicate the vision to the viewer. So this page, we really wanted just to list those values there up at the top, as you can kind of see, and how we use those values in our lives, and the client uses the values in their lives. And also, at the bottom, we have application statements. So for each of the 3 vertical brands, there are statements of how we specifically use these values in our day-to-day work. So we wanted those on the site as well, just to really communicate that we find these values super important. As Susan already covered this morning, we use these throughout our entire day. They are our core foundation. The next page we'll cover is our ecosystem page. The ecosystem is a term we use to describe the brands that Vertical Life manages, as well as how the viewer integrates into those brands. So we have brief descriptions up here at the top of how the viewer can get involved. There's really 4 main categories we just briefly described, put into simple terms, of how the viewer can maybe see, like, hey, we align with the values, we like the vision, how can I actually get integrated into the ecosystem? Along with descriptions of the 3 brands we manage. Just for reference, the Vertical Life currently manages Vertical Immersive, Vertical Wealth, and Vertical Studios, which I'm sure Brian can tell you more about later. We won't go into that right now. We also, on this page, have spotlights for specific roles. So actually, at the bottom here, you can see we have Donna on the site. So Donna is an example of a partner of the Vertical Life. So we have a brief description there of what she does and how she stewards Wisdom Builders. And then below that, we have a description of a champion. So as some of you might know, we have Mr. Hoovner on here. Our next page we'd like to briefly cover is the resources page. This page was something that we didn't really originally have in the plan for the website, but we decided it would be needed. We'll go into more in depth on what is on this page later, but we wanted to give viewers something tangible they could take away. Delve deeper into the philosophies behind the Vertical Life, and also we did end up developing a podcast, which we'll also talk about later, and we needed a page to host that. So I'll now hand it off to Sophia, who's going to talk about a little bit of how we approach the video side.
Thank you, Carson. Doesn't their website look incredible? They did an awesome job. So along with the website, we thought another thing that would be super valuable to have on the website is a vision video to really help the audience go in depth and understand this incredible, huge vision of the Vertical Life and really see if it aligns with their vision as well. And then secondly, another thing to supplement with the website is having an infographic. So this is just another way to visually describe some of the harder concepts of the Vertical Life, because they're not necessarily selling something or wanting people to join something. It's a little bit different business structure. And so our original goal with this was to visually describe the Vertical Life and the ecosystem, but as we were going into this, we realized that our focus was all wrong and that we were putting the Vertical Life in the center rather than the audience. And so we kept going down bunny rabbit holes and doing iteration after iteration after iteration after iteration, and we dug ourselves into quite a hole, actually, and it was a really exhausting day. One day we were like, we need to stop. We just need to think about this and like figure this out. And we all realized that, like, who are us? Like, our brains are not fully developed. We're trying to figure out this large concept and we just can't. And so that's one thing I love about Vertical, is that being with the Christian community, we were able to take a step back and just took 5 minutes to pray about it. And it was so cool to see how the Holy Spirit spoke to each one of us differently, and it aligned, and then people were like jumping in and whiteboarding, and it was so awesome that we had a new realigned vision of creating an infographic to help the audience visualize their transformation as they engage with the Vertical Life. And so from this, we can't take credit for this, the Lord. He helped us create this new infographic, and I don't have time to go into the details of it, but really it's to help the audience visually understand how the Vertical Life acts as an outline and a framework to help them take every sphere of their life and be able to align it vertically so that they can achieve immeasurably more for the kingdom of God. So that was something we added, but Langdon will go into more.
Thank you. And yes, we are nowhere near finished. My name is Langdon, And I'm going to show you, what I'm about to show you, everything is extra that we thought Vertical Life would accelerate their growth to where they want to be even sooner than they even planned to. So we started off with a podcast, and then print materials and digital content. These are all different items that are key to creating the growth that they're looking for. So, starting off with a podcast, we created a season one a season one timeline of each episode. So this will give them the opportunity to just look at the sheet, know what they're about to talk about, and either have a guest on or just do a solo conversation style with someone about this topic. They'll typically be 20 minutes. It could be 45 minutes, depending on the conversation, and it could be a question that anyone has about the vertical life, or something that they may want to clarify a little bit more on. We also created a list of hosts that a representative from Vertical Immersive could guest on. So this would be really unique, as someone who has never heard of this concept of education we would get their initial real-time reaction, and we would be able to expand our awareness through their audience as well. And then we created 3 episodes that are currently live right now. They are on our YouTube channel. If you want to go watch them, you could currently. And these are not attached to the season 1, but they are examples of what the conversation style would look like as the podcast continues. And then these print materials, we started out with a brochure. Now this is something you could give to your friend, or more ideally a business owner or business partner that you know. And it is quick information of all the basics that you're going to need to understand to know who we are and why we're doing this. And if you're even more curious, we have a QR code to our website. And so this will give you further access to our system. And then we move into the info card. Now this is something that we would like to, it's incongruent with a business card, except this is the quick information, even more brief, but it's a tangible way to constantly remind yourself of who we are and maybe how you could connect with us, and we would love to partner with you on this. And then my friend Andy is going to go into the more in-depth content here.
Thank you, Langdon. I'm Andy, and in addition to the printed materials, we also put together 4 different white papers for people to take off of the website and look over. Each of these go over different areas of different people's lives, so there's an application for almost anybody. Firstly, there's a spiritual fit check. That's for the person looking for more in their spiritual walk and ways they can self-assess. Next is the creative clarity checklist. This is for people who have a creative drive, but they're in kind of a creative slump. They don't have a direction for all of this energy they have. This is a way to check on yourself and figure out how you can dedicate your creativity to even more. Next is a financial stewardship paper. There we go. This is for people who have wealth and finances that they want to reorganize, that they want to rededicate to live more generously and to put it towards even greater goals. And lastly, we have the vertical framework. This is an outline of how not just the Vertical Life uses their 5 values, but ways that you, as their audience, can apply these values to your own life. Next, I will be going into future goals. With all of the adjustments we have made, we are hoping to see a lot more traffic through the website. It now has a lot more content, a lot more meaningful content for people to spend time reading, learning about the Vertical Life, and it has a lot more draws to the different vertical brands. The 4 papers I mentioned earlier all have a funnel into one of the vertical brands. The podcast, we are hoping that by visiting other podcasts, the audience will grow to even their audiences. And finally, just in general, we're hoping to have increased brand presence for the Vertical Life. We want it to be an established name and authority in its area. Right. Throughout all of this, it has been a very bumpy road. Our team has found a lot of areas that were difficult to get through, but we found that time and time again, when we brought our problems to the Lord, that we were able to exceed and to continue to bring everything that we had as long as we kept bringing it to the Lord. And in that, we found this verse that really sums up the process. I want to say thank you, everyone, for giving us your time and attention as we go into a time for questions. So does anybody have the first one for us?
Andy, you mentioned yesterday that you had some switch up in the leadership of the team early on, which I thought speaks a lot about all of you. But so would you go over that with us all?
Yeah, absolutely. So as mentioned earlier, all of us are very natural born leaders. We all wanted to take charge of whatever we could. We all volunteered ourselves. And at the very beginning, we decided who is really going to lead the team as a whole through all of our tasks, keep everybody accountable. And initially, I volunteered for that position. I figured it would be a good way to learn, a good way to grow. We got about 4 weeks in, and I just dropped everything handed to me. I was trying to carry everything, but I was trying to do it on my own, and we just kind of stopped. We had to reorganize, and I was very happy that Sophia stepped into the role that I had initially volunteered for. She took charge and was able to keep everybody on the same track the rest of the time, and even through to the end, kept everybody organized. Do you have any more questions? Is it?
Talk about the difficulty of speaking with the 3 different leaders and, getting them on the same page. Were any challenges there?
Yes. Would my client communicator like to go into this?
So as most of you probably caught on to with Brian's introduction, is Brian really holds most of the vision behind it. Throughout all the vertical brands, he's referred to as the Chief Vision Officer, which is not a super commonly used term, but that just uniquely fits him because he carries the vision. So that's where he came from most of the time, is he has the long-term goals, like where's this going to look like and its full fulfillment. And then secondly, we have Susan. Susan is the CEO, Chief Executive Officer, because she gets things done. So sometimes those 2 roles butt heads because there's a lot of things Brian wants to do, and they're amazing ideas. And then sometimes we look at those things, and they're like, we can't do that. And then we have Caitlin, who's the Chief Operations Officer, and she kind of looks like at the budget, and again also at how we're going to do this. And it's like, I can't. So we, also being students and not being in charge, had to approach that respectfully of there are going to be things we can do in this capstone, there are going to be things we can't do in this capstone. There's only so much of an extent of how we can be involved in this, and we wanted to make sure that what we did we could do well. So kind of approaching it from, we wanted to be careful what we promised. As I mentioned, we really only promised a website, and the infographic as well was something that was sort of promised from the beginning. But approaching the rest of this, it's like Brian really loved the idea of the podcast, and we kind of knew from our perspective, like, okay, we are going to have time to do this, but we didn't want to commit to that from the start. So that was kind of a balance of going back and forth of like, we don't want to bite off more than we can chew, but we also really want to deliver something to the client that's quite exceptional. Did that answer your question well?
Sure, yes.
All right. Any other questions? We still have a few minutes here.
What was the hardest part you guys?
So if we go back to the building blocks of the vertical life, the struggle was the audience personas and the story branding. That was the real struggle because we had 3 personas that we were trying to sift through. And we were going at it from a wrong angle. And it took us, 2-3 days just to get our mindset organized on, okay, what is the general idea, the general audience we're trying to get to? And that was our big struggle. And then putting that into the story branding and having it, okay, this is what the vertical life is trying to get to. That was the biggest thing. But we started out with these 2, and then the UVP was not as difficult, but those were the 3 main things that we struggled with.
He also is very humble. Yeah. Daniel and Andy, they said that they had to spend like a couple of days working on this to reorganize their thoughts. Up until that point, they had been working on this for like 2 weeks. So this was a long time coming for them, figuring out what exactly these things are and what do they mean and who is it going to reach the correct person to make sure that everything else that we did is going to be built on these factors. So getting the foundations correct was of utmost importance. And I want to say that these two did their like hardest work and they were excellent with it.
I was just gonna add, there are like masterminds in there, like whiteboarding and everything. It's on this TV. We could show you. It looks like you're mad genius, but they figured it out. We were all like, what in the world are we doing? Also, like shout out to Andy with the leadership. He is incredibly hardworking. He's a manager at Chick-fil-A, so he is an extremely busy guy. But each and every person poured their heart and soul into this project, and that's why we have such an amazing project to be proud of. So.
I'll say, I can't speak for Caitlin and Susan, but from a client perspective, yeah, that like incredibly exceeds my expectations. What you guys came up with. Would you agree? Like I don't know. It would have taken me years to probably try to articulate what you guys somehow clarified with God's help in the space of a semester. That's truly amazing.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Was there any final questions? I know we probably have to move on.
So kind of following up on that, what would you say was the most rewarding part of the project?
Ooh. I think like each phase had its rewarding. I don't know, Kaya, do you have?
You're so right. Each phase had its own reward. But for me, it was, of course, the infographic. She mentioned that there was a meeting where we all got together, and it was a long day. And honestly, it really, truly was. We were all brain dead and frustrated, and we were like, I don't know what's happening. So at the end of the day, being able to sit back and pray and figuring out what this is coming to and having that energy back in us of like, oh, we've got a direction now, that was very rewarding. And then a step further, being able to be in that presentation where we showed the infographic to our client and seeing the kind of gears turn in their heads where, okay, this isn't what we originally asked you, but I'm seeing how this works even better. That was very rewarding for me to be like, yes, we worked our hardest and God really provided for us. And then how we came together as a team to make sure that we met all our deadlines and we were able to get above and beyond done. That was rewarding.
Yes, like the one thing I heard was like, you know, you guys had a little bit too much on campus, but that's because of some weird fun you guys chose. And then it's like, I had one little nitpick, and it was, you know, some print samples would have been good to provide to the client. And then I saw you hand them to Brian, and I'm just like, really? Okay, I can't criticize anything.
Jen. All right, so I just wanted to note that you guys are color coordinated in the brand, in your client's brand's colors.
Thanks to Carson.
Yeah, I want to know whose idea was that.
Yeah, I think it was Carson and Andy that both thought, oh, we should all coordinate on the day. And then Carson was like, I'm going to go and sew all of these. So he spent a couple of days sewing us all bow ties and handkerchiefs. So kudos to the two of them.
Wonderful job.